Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Easy English Podcast. I'm Hannah, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Alex. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hi, Hannah. I am doing great, thank you. And a huge welcome to all of our listeners out there, whether you are walking your dog, cooking dinner, or just relaxing at home. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Yes, we really are. Today, we are going to talk about something that I get asked about all the time. It is a classic English grammar puzzle, the difference between must and have to. To a lot of English learners, they seem exactly the same, but are they really?
That is a brilliant topic, Hannah. They do seem very similar because both of them are used when we talk about things we need to do, obligations, as teachers like to say. But native speakers actually use them differently based on who is making the rule. Once you understand this little secret, it becomes so much easier.
A secret! I love secrets. Okay, let's start with a very common mistake. A lot of learners think must is just a fancier, more polite version of have to. Like if I want to sound professional in an office, I should say, I must write this email instead of I have to write this email. Is that true, Alex?
Actually, no. That is a very common misconception. It's not about being polite or formal. It's actually about where the feeling of obligation comes from. Is it coming from inside you or from outside you? Let's break that down.
Ooh, inside versus outside. That sounds very deep. Give us an example.
Okay, imagine this. I look in the mirror and I see that my hair is incredibly messy and too long. I think to myself, wow, I really need a haircut. In this moment, I say I must get a haircut. Why? Because it is my personal opinion. Nobody is forcing me. It's my internal feeling.
Ah, I see. So must comes from your own mind, your own decision. You are telling yourself that it is important.
Exactly. It's internal. Now, let's look at have to. Imagine I get a new job at a very fancy bank. The boss looks at me and says, Alex, all employees here are required to have neat, short hair. Now, it is not my choice. It is a company rule. So I tell you, Hannah, I have to get a haircut for my new job.
That makes total sense. So you use have to because the rule is coming from the outside, from your boss, the bank, or the law.
Exactly. That is the core difference. Must is for internal obligations, things you decide are necessary. Have to is for external obligations, rules, laws, or situations that are forced upon you by someone else.
Wow, that is actually a very simple way to think about it. Let me try to give you an example to see if I got it right. If I say, I must eat healthier food, that means I decided this. I want to feel better. I want to eat more vegetables. It's my own personal goal.
Spot on, Hannah. That is a perfect use of must. It's your personal choice.
But if I go to the doctor and the doctor looks at my medical tests and says, Hannah, you have a serious stomach issue. You cannot eat spicy food anymore. Then I would say to my friends, I have to eat healthier food because the doctor ordered it, right?
Perfect, 100% correct. In the second case, the doctor is the external authority making the rule, so have to is the natural choice. You see, even though the action of eating healthy is the same, the reason why you are doing it changes the word you use.
This is great. Let's practice this with a few more daily situations, because I know our listeners love concrete examples. Let's talk about waking up early. I am a morning person, but I know you love to sleep in, Alex.
Oh yes, I love my sleep. Waking up early is always a struggle for me.
I know. So if it's the weekend and you want to wake up early at 6 a.m. because you want to go for a beautiful morning run and watch the sunrise, what would you say?
In that case, because it's my own desire and plan, I would say I must wake up early tomorrow because I want to see the sunrise. It's my internal motivation.
But what if it is Monday morning and you have a massive, important meeting with your boss at 8 a.m. and it takes you an hour to travel to the office?
In that case, I definitely do not want to wake up early, but I have no choice. The company expects me to be there, so I would say I have to wake up early tomorrow because I have a meeting. The alarm clock is my enemy and the rule is external.
Perfect. I think our listeners are really starting to feel the difference now. Must is about me, my feelings, my wishes. Have to is about the world, the rules, the circumstances.
Yes, and here's another interesting thing, Hannah. In everyday spoken English, native speakers actually use have to much more often than must. If you are ever in doubt, have to is usually the safer bet because we are surrounded by external rules and schedules all day long.
By the way, if you are enjoying this episode, taking a brief second to subscribe or leave a like really helps our small show reach other English learners around the world.
It truly does. And please leave your grammar questions in the comments as we love reading and answering them. Anyway, back to how must can sometimes sound a bit too strong.
That is a really good tip. So if a learner is speaking and they get confused, just default to have to, because it's super common and almost always sounds natural.
Exactly. Think about a normal day. I have to pay my bills. I have to buy groceries. I have to go to work. I have to pick up the kids from school. These are all external realities of life. We use have to for almost all of them.
But wait, what about when we want to show strong recommendation to a friend? Like when I watch a really amazing movie and I want you to watch it too? I often say, Alex, you must watch this film. Why do I use must there? I am not your boss. I cannot make rules for you.
Haha, that is a fantastic question, Hannah. This is a special, very common way we use must in conversation. We use it for strong, warm recommendations. When you say you must watch this film, you are expressing your very strong, positive personal feeling. You are saying, I love this movie so much that my heart insists you experience it too.
Oh, so it's still coming from my internal feeling, my enthusiasm.
Exactly. It is still internal. If you said you have to watch this film, that is also fine and very common, but must really highlights your personal pride in the cake and your warm invitation to your guest.
I love that. A warm hug of a recommendation. Let's do another one of those. What about food? If I cook a delicious cake, can I say, you must try a piece?
Yes, absolutely. You must try this cake. It is delicious. It sounds very welcoming and enthusiastic. If you said you have to try this cake, it is also correct, but must really highlights your personal pride in the cake and your warm invitation to your guest.
That makes so much sense. So must is like my personal energy pushing out into the world, whether it is self-discipline, like I must study tonight, or a warm recommendation, like you must try this cake. But now, Alex, we need to talk about the real danger zone. This is where I always get confused, and I know so many English learners do too. What happens when we make these words negative?
Oh, the negative zone. This is indeed the danger zone, Hannah. In positive sentences, must and have to are actually quite close in meaning. If you mix them up, people will still understand you perfectly. But in negative sentences, wow, the meaning changes completely. They are not even in the same neighborhood anymore.
Exactly. When I first learned English, I thought, okay, if must and have to are similar in positive sentences, then mustn't and don't have to must be similar in negative sentences. But my teacher looked at me with horror when I said them wrong.
Yes, it can create some very funny or even scary misunderstandings. Let's start with mustn't, which is the short form of must not. When we say you mustn't do something, what we really mean is do not do this. It is forbidden, it is against the law, or it is a very bad idea. It is a zero tolerance rule.
So it's a hard limit, a red light, no entry.
Exactly. Think of a big red stop sign. For example, if you're at a gas station, you mustn't smoke. It is extremely dangerous and illegal. You have no choice. If you smoke, there could be an explosion. So you mustn't smoke here.
That is a great example. You mustn't smoke. What about driving? You mustn't drive through a red light?
Perfect. You mustn't drive through a red light. It is illegal and dangerous. Or in a museum, you mustn't touch the paintings. If you touch them, you might damage them, or the security guard will run over and shout at you.
Okay, so mustn't is all about prohibition. Rules, danger, things that are strictly forbidden. Now, what about don't have to?
This is where the magic happens and where the contrast is so beautiful. Don't have to means you do not need to do something. It is not necessary. But, and this is the key, you can do it if you want to. You have total freedom. It is your choice.
Ah, so don't have to is like a green light with a sign that says only if you feel like it. It is optional.
Yes, it is completely optional. Think about a museum again. In many museums in London, entry is free. You do not need to buy a ticket. So we say you don't have to pay to enter the museum.
Oh, that's a perfect contrast. You mustn't touch the paintings, that is forbidden, but you don't have to pay to get in. That is just free, it is not necessary to pay, but if you want to donate some money, you can.
Spot on, Hannah. Let's play with this. Imagine we are at a restaurant, and the service charge is already included in the bill. The tip is already there. I might say to you, Hannah, you don't have to leave a tip.
Right, because the money is already included. I don't need to pay extra. But if I really loved the waiter and want to give them extra money anyway, I can. There is no rule stopping me.
Exactly. You have the choice. Now, what happens if you confuse them here? What if you say, Hannah, you mustn't leave a tip?
That would sound like tipping is illegal or a terrible crime, like the police will come and arrest me if I leave a coin on the table.
Exactly. You mustn't leave a tip sounds like the waiter will be insulted or it is against the strict rules of the country. It sounds very dramatic. Let's do another one. Imagine a friend invites us to a party at 8 p.m. The friend says, it is a casual party. You don't have to arrive exactly at 8.
That means if I arrive at 8:15, it is totally fine. But if I want to be super punctual and arrive at 8, that is also fine. No stress.
Yes. Now, what if the friend says, you mustn't arrive at 8?
That sounds like they are planning a surprise party for me, and if I show up at 8, I will ruin the secret. Or maybe they're still cleaning the house in their pajamas and they will be angry if I see them.
Precisely. It means do not come at 8. It is a bad idea. It is forbidden. You see how the entire meaning of the situation changes just by changing that one little negative verb.
It is huge. Let's practice with some daily life examples because I think this is where our listeners can really lock this grammar into their brains. Let's think about a workplace. Alex, what is something we mustn't do at work?
Well, in a professional office, you mustn't shout at your boss. That is a very bad idea if you want to keep your job.
Definitely a mustn't. You mustn't shout at your boss. And what is something we don't have to do at work?
You don't have to wear a formal suit if the office dress code is casual. You can wear jeans and a t-shirt if you want. It is not necessary to wear a suit, but if you love suits, nobody will stop you.
Perfect. What about at school? Students mustn't cheat on their exams. That is a strict rule with big consequences.
Yes, absolutely. And for students, they don't have to go to school on Sundays. It is their day off. They can sleep in or they can study if they want to, but it is not required.
I love these contrasts. It makes the difference so clear. Let's try one more. Imagine we are talking about health and lifestyle. If you want to lose weight, you don't have to stop eating bread completely.
Oh, thank goodness. I love bread. So, you don't have to stop eating bread means it is not necessary for weight loss. You can still eat it in moderation.
But if you are highly allergic to peanuts, you mustn't eat peanuts.
Yes, because if you do, you will end up in the hospital. That is a life or death mustn't.
It really is a life or death situation. Now, I want to talk about something I notice a lot when I watch movies or listen to native English speakers. It feels like people don't actually say the word must very often in casual daily conversations. Is that true, or am I just imagining things?
You are completely right, Hannah. Your ears are not playing tricks on you. In modern, casual spoken English, we rarely use the word must for daily obligations. It sounds a bit too formal, too heavy, or even a bit old-fashioned in a normal conversation.
Ah, so if I say to a friend, you must watch this new TV show, does it sound strange?
It doesn't sound terrible because we do use must for strong recommendations sometimes. Like, you must try this cake, it is amazing. But even then, in everyday life, we usually prefer to say you have to or even you've got to.
You have to try this cake. Yes, that sounds much more natural to me. What about when we talk about actual rules or daily tasks? If I say, I must clean my room today, does that sound a bit like a Shakespeare play?
Maybe not quite Shakespeare, but it does sound a bit like you're giving yourself a very serious, dramatic order. If you want to sound natural, you should almost always choose have to or need to instead. For example, I have to clean my room today, or I need to clean my room today. That is what native speakers say 99% of the time.
That is such a relief for learners to hear. So if we almost always use have to in casual speech, does that mean we can just forget about must entirely?
Not quite. You still need to understand it when you read it because you will see must on signs, in official documents, and in books. For example, a sign at an airport might say, passengers must present their boarding pass. Or a notice at a swimming pool might say, children must be supervised by an adult at all times. It is very common in written formal English.
I see. So must is like the official formal voice of authority, and have to is the friendly, everyday voice we use with our friends and family.
Exactly. That is a perfect way to think about it. And there is another very common, very natural phrase that native speakers use instead of have to when they are speaking quickly. Have you ever heard the word gotta?
Oh, yes. I hear gotta all the time in songs and movies, like I've gotta go now, or you've gotta see this. Is that the same as have to?
It is exactly the same. Gotta is just a short, relaxed way of saying have got to, which means the exact same thing as have to. So I have to go becomes I've got to go, which in fast, natural speech sounds like I gotta go.
Wow, I gotta go. It sounds so smooth. But is it okay for English learners to use gotta in their own speaking, or does it sound too slangy?
It is perfectly fine to use in casual conversations. It doesn't sound rude at all. It just sounds very relaxed. But remember, you should only use it when speaking, not when writing an important email or an essay for school. In writing, you should write, I have to, or I must.
That makes total sense. Let's practice this natural speaking style. If you are at a party and you suddenly realize it is very late, what do you say to your host?
I would say, oh, look at the time. I've got to run. Or I have to get going. I have work early tomorrow. I definitely wouldn't say, I must depart now. That would make everyone laugh.
I must depart now. Sounds like you are a king leaving a royal palace. What about if you are recommending a great restaurant to a colleague at work? How would you say that naturally?
I would say, oh, you have to try that Italian place down the street. Their pasta is unbelievable. It sounds warm and enthusiastic. If I said, you must dine at that restaurant, it sounds very cold and stiff.
It really does. It is amazing how much the choice of word changes the feeling of the sentence, even when the basic meaning is very similar. This brings me to another interesting question. What about when we want to make a guess about something, like when we are almost 100% sure about a situation?
Ah, yes. This is a very special and very common use of must. We use it to make logical deductions. This is when we say, this must be true because of the evidence.
Can you give us a concrete example of this? My brain needs a picture.
Of course. Imagine you walk outside and the ground is completely wet, there are puddles everywhere, and people are walking with wet umbrellas. You didn't actually see the rainfall, but you are 99% sure it happened. You say, it must have rained.
Oh, that is a great example. You are using must because it is the only logical explanation. What if I see my friend yawning constantly, rubbing her eyes, and drinking a huge cup of coffee? I can say, she must be very tired.
Exactly. You are looking at the evidence, the yawning, the coffee, and making a strong guess. You are not ordering her to be tired. You are saying, I am sure she is tired.
This is so interesting because in this case, we actually do use must in everyday conversation. We don't say she has to be tired in the same way, do we?
Actually, we can say both. You can say she must be tired or she has to be tired. In this specific situation, both mean I am sure she is tired. But must is incredibly common here, even in casual speech. For example, if you hear a loud noise outside your window, you might say, what was that? It must be the wind.
Aha, that makes so much sense. So if we look at the evidence, we can use both must and has to make a strong guess. But what happens if we change the sentence to a negative one? Like if I want to say, I am sure something is not true. Do we say must not or doesn't have to?
Oh, this is a fantastic question, Hannah, and it is a major trap for English learners. If you want to say you are sure something is not true, we actually use can't. Yes, can't. For example, if your friend is smiling, laughing, and full of energy, you say she can't be tired. You do not say she must not be tired to mean you are sure she isn't. And if you say she doesn't have to be tired, that means something completely different.
Wait, she doesn't have to be tired means it is not necessary for her to be tired, right?
Exactly. You nailed it. She doesn't have to means there is no obligation, no necessity. For example, you don't have to wake up early on Sunday. It means you can sleep in if you want to. But you must not means it is forbidden, against the rules. For example, you must not smoke in the hospital. That is a strict rule.
Wow, the negative forms are so different from the positive ones. Let me see if I have this straight. Must and have to are very similar in the positive form, meaning something is necessary, but must not and don't have to are completely different. Must not means do not do it, it is a bad idea or against the law. Don't have to just means you have a choice. It is not necessary.
You've got it perfectly. That is the golden rule of these two verbs. Let's do a quick mini quiz with this. If I say, you blank, write this down, I will send you the notes later. What goes in the blank?
Let's think. If you are going to send me the notes anyway, it means I don't need to write them down. I have a choice, but it is not necessary. So the answer is, you don't have to write this down. Am I right?
Spot on. Perfect. Now, what if I say, you touch that hot stove, you will burn your hand?
Ouch. That sounds dangerous. It is definitely a bad idea and something I should avoid completely. So we need the strong prohibition. The answer is, you must not touch that hot stove.
Absolutely correct. See how easy it is when you think about the meaning? Must not is for danger or rules. Don't have to is for freedom and choice.
This is incredibly helpful, Alex. I think our listeners are ready to try a bigger interactive quiz now. Let's play a game where you give us a real-life situation, and we have to choose between must not, have to, or don't have to.
I love this idea. Let's do it. Listeners, play along with Hannah. Think about your answer before Hannah says hers. Here is situation number 1. You are at a museum. There is a sign next to a beautiful painting that says, no photos. What do you say to your friend?
Okay, listeners, think about it. It is a museum rule. It is forbidden. So we should say, you must not take photos here. Is that right, Alex?
That is 100% correct. You must not take photos. Now, situation number 2. You're going to a party. The host says, Please don't buy anything. We have plenty of food and drinks. What do you say to your partner before you leave the house?
The host said we don't need to bring anything. There is no rule forcing us to buy food, and it's not necessary. So we say we don't have to buy any food, right?
Yes, we don't have to buy any food. You can buy some if you really want to be polite, but it is not required. Great job. Let's do situation number 3. Your tooth has been hurting for 3 days. It is getting worse and worse. You can barely eat. What do you say to yourself?
Ooh, a painful toothache? This feels like a strong personal feeling of necessity. It is my own body telling me I need help. So I would say I must see a dentist. But wait, could I also say I have to see a dentist?
You can absolutely say both here. In everyday conversation, I have to see a dentist is actually extremely common because we treat it as an external necessity. The pain is forcing us to go. But I must see a dentist emphasizes your personal determination. Both are wonderful answers.
This really shows that in positive sentences, the line between them is very soft. We don't need to stress too much about choosing the perfect one because native speakers use both.
That is the best takeaway from today's episode. Don't let grammar anxiety stop you from speaking. In positive sentences, if you are not sure, just use have to. It is always natural and correct in daily life. Use must when you want to make a strong guess based on evidence like, you must be tired. Or when you want to express a warm personal recommendation like, you must try this cake.
And for the negative sentences, just remember must not is for rules and danger, and don't have to is for things you can skip if you want to. What a great summary!
It really is. Well, Hannah, we have covered a lot of ground today, and I think our listeners have a much clearer picture of how must and have to work in the real world.
I agree. I feel much more confident now, and I hope everyone listening at home or on their commute does too. Thank you so much for explaining this so clearly, Alex.
It was my absolute pleasure, Hannah. Thank you to all our amazing listeners for joining us today on the Easy English Podcast. Keep practicing, keep smiling, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.